What are ESG funds? Hey, there's a lot of talk out there today in investments about ESG funds, and the purpose of this program is to show you what they are and to tell you a little bit of something about them, okay? And most any advisor can do ESG funds if they're wanted, or non-ESG funds if they're not wanted. And I just want to make sure that if you're watching this video and you're trying to find out what all the buzzword is about ESG, that you know what's being talked about. So here we go. What are ESG funds? Well, first of all, the E stands for environmental, the S stands for social, and the G stands for governmental. Now, what it really is, if you look it up on the internet, you're going to find, and I'm not trying to be political one way or the other, that these are funds that in their investments adopt a philosophy that supports, leans toward a progressive political mentality. In fact, I've heard it said, rightfully so, that if there wasn't out there something already that was ESP, then instead of governmental, it would have straight out been political, because it definitely is an investment that has a progressive political leaning in mind when they put it out. Okay, so that's what it stands for. Environmental, social or societal, and governmental or political. So that's what it is. Now here's what happened. These funds have been floating around out there for years. And within the past couple of years, the regulatory body of the administration has dictated regulations on mostly your 401k accounts, because those are controlled, believe it or not by a financial arm or the Treasury. The 401k accounts are by and large controlled by the Department of Labor, or the DOL. So they've come out with regulations that said all 401ks must, if they don't have anything else, they've got to have in their ESG funds. Now, some 401ks have gone to the extreme, and everything within that company, particularly if it's one of those companies that leans toward the ESG mentality, every one of those companies, some of those companies have just taken all of the other stuff out of their 401ks, and they only have ESG funds within their 401k. Other companies have added ESG funds and named them as that, just identified them as that within the 401ks. And then some companies are still a little bit slow to move over that way, and they don't have any designations of ESG funds. But it's basically within four plans: 401ks, 403bs, 457s is where they've been dictated that they be a part by the regulatory part of the administration, Department of Labor in particular. Now, along came Congress, the people we elect to pass laws. And in the past year, they actually, even though it's a split Congress between both sides and they don't agree on very much anymore at all, they came up with a legislation and said, you can't mandate that people be in ESG funds, or that's all they have, or that they have to include them within their 401k. The law was passed. The law went to the presidential desk. And for the first time in over 2 years, that law passed by Congress over the regulatory body's dictates was vetoed by the president. The first veto he's done in 26 months of being in office. So that's what's going on. I'm not trying to be political. I'm just stating fact about what's going on with the ESG. So that's what's going on. Now, I want to show you, it's more important to understand it from a financial advisor standpoint and from an investor standpoint, how well do these funds perform? Now, I'm going to give you definitely a non-right-wing conservative Bloomberg. And they did a study for the past 6 years, since 2017, of the ESG funds that were out there and the non-ESG funds that were out there. Now, we're not including the fees, because as I've looked up individually ESG funds, the fees within those funds are quite higher than they are in the run-of-the-mill normal investments that are out there. Okay, the fees are higher within the ESG, but there's nothing scientific about that. That's just the ones that I've looked up myself as I've looked them up for people, or I've looked them up just for my own sake. But here's what Bloomberg found. Over a 5-6 year look back, ESG funds performed at 6.3% gain per year. And market funds that are not in ESG performed, this is according to Bloomberg, not Tom. The market funds performed at 8.9%. That's a 2.3% difference. Now you say, well, okay, it'd be good. It'd be good for the environment. It'd be good for society. It'd be good for my political bent. Great. But you've got to realize what it's doing to you from an investment standpoint, at least the way they are right now. And if you choose to say, okay, that's what I know, Tom informed me of that, I still want ESG funds, then you go get ESG funds. If you still want market funds, you go get your own market funds. You come to us and we'll work with you to get whichever one you want. We can do whichever side you want. Please understand. I'm just here to inform. Now, but I want you to see the difference. If you were starting out at 20 years old and you saved for 40 years within the ESG funds, and then the counter is you were starting out at 20 years old and you saved for 20 years in the regular market funds that are available. Got it? That's the difference. So if we were the impact of 40 years of savings, let's say you were able to put not the maximum of $22,500 in your 401k, but you were able to put $10,000 a year away for 40 straight years in an ESG fund that performed, as Bloomberg said, 6.3% per year over the last 5 years, the previous 5 years. You would have grown that $10,000 per year for 40 years, you would have grown that at 6.3% growth to $1.669 million. Congratulations. That's a very healthy sum. But on the counter, and the difference is amazing. And the difference is what Mark Twain, some of you guys remember reading Huckleberry Finn or some of those other things, and he used to be known as a very famous author. Mark Twain said the miracle of compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. The way you put the money in, you make a little bit more, you make a little bit more. And this is an illustration of making 2.6% per year more if you're in regular market funds versus the ESG funds. Watch this. If the impact of 40 years of savings at $10,000 per year in the market at 8.9, remember versus 6.3, is 3.289 million. Now just focus right here and I'll go back and forth. In the market funds at 8.9, you're just a second, you're at 3.289,568. In ESG funds, you would be at 1.669. There's a dramatic difference in investments, is all I'm trying to show you. Now, if you're committed to ESG funds, we can help you. But you need to know going in the ground rules and the way the game is being played. But if you are committed to non-ESG funds, we are very much able to help you as well. But we just want you to know the difference in ESG. And it's like everything else. We start with a blank piece of paper when we build your portfolio. And if you come to us and you say, I'd love to work with just ESG funds, we've got it. And if you say, I'd love to do my best to not work with ESG funds, we've got it and we can help you. Now, here's what you need to also understand. The reality is, some of the companies that do have ESG funds, and I've had people come to me, well, what about XYZ or what about ABC? I don't want those because they have or they don't have ESG funds. You got to understand, as big as these investment companies are, and they're a big collaboration of all kinds of different companies and all kinds of different funds. So, some of these huge companies have a lot of ESG funds, and they have their name on a lot of non-ESG funds as well. So don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, but you need to understand what you're investing within that company if you want to lean one way or the other in this political environment of ESG versus non-ESG funds. But not all of their funds are ESG. Remember, the reality is some companies do have ESG funds, but they're not all. So you need to work with the individual funds, if you're that concerned about it, to make sure. And it's like everything else. There's a little bit of good and bad in everything, and in a huge portfolio, you're probably going to have a few funds that lean ESG, even if you don't like it. And if you have an ESG portfolio, you're probably going to have a few funds that lean toward a regular market and are not ESG, even if you don't like it. But we will do our best, if you're working with us, to make sure and build a portfolio is what you want, because your portfolio needs to project and needs to be a picture of what you believe in and what you're doing with your investments. So I just want you to get the ground rules. And if you say, well, boy, that was a lot of information, go back and listen to this YouTube again. You say, I really like this YouTube. Well, tell somebody about it. Send it to somebody. Help us spread the word so that somebody's giving a fair representation of these things. Who represents both kinds if you, in fact, want both kinds? If you need to get in touch with us, you can email us, info@Mosley, that's Mosley, wealthmanagement.com. And if you need to call us, 714-421-4288. Again, info@mosleywealthmanagement.com or 714-421-4288. Look, we will do our best at all times to help you in every way we can, but not just to invest your money without you knowing what it's in, but we will do our best to inform you and to educate you as to what's going on when you start hearing all these terms, ESG and all of these other things. So please, give us a call, tell somebody about this YouTube channel, this podcast, and let us get the word out about ESGs and non-ESGs and the differences. Thanks for tuning in.
Investment advisory services offered by duly registered individuals through Mosley Wealth Management, Inc. MWM and Mosley Insurance and Financial Services are affiliated companies by common ownership. License number 0K76766. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength claims paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This content is intended for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. All hypothetical examples are provided for illustrative purposes only. They do not represent real-life scenarios. Mosley Insurance and Financial Services, nor its agents or representatives may not give tax or legal advice. Individuals should consult with a qualified professional for guidance before making any investment decisions. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Some of the information provided may be from one or more third parties which we believe to be reliable sources, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Mosley Insurance and Financial Services.